Hey, what's up everybody? So, you might be wondering what this video is, why I'm going over prototype decks now that they've been out for a little bit. Two reasons. A, I kind of want to take an in-depth look at them from a deck tech perspective, what the deck's trying to do, how strong it is in the vacuum that is just 5 decks. Now, some decks, because of the way that the vacuums kind of form where you have these 5 decks going against each other only without too much going on between them, there's decks that are obviously clearly stronger than the rest just because, not because the deck is weak, but because there's a little bit of identity crisis, or the deck doesn't work against, popular matchups, or is not quite built in the right way. So we're starting with water, as you can see behind on the screen, because I think water, as a lot of the community does, thinks it's the worst deck, not because the deck's necessarily bad. Like, the cards are great in the deck, but there's some things that just don't make sense in the deck versus how it could have just been a way better deck with only a couple of additions added to it. Now, don't be afraid if you bought Water Deck and like, oh no, I only bought Water Deck and what I'm going to do now because it's not going to be strong compared to the other decks. Don't worry, Dan has already addressed this. Last minute, he's going to add some sideboardish style cards. So there's going to be an additional 12 cards for each deck to allow you to customize the deck a little bit to kind of get it to a point where it's a little bit stronger, a little bit more consistent, a little bit more in line of one specific strategy. Because this water deck here, it's trying to play a tempo game and a burn game and like it's trying to do so many things at once. It's trying to like be fast, it's trying to be slow, it's trying to be, defensive, but it's also got burn cards and it's a got identity crisis. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the deck. I'm going to go over it quick and we're just going to go what I would take out right away just to make the deck better and what I would replace them with. Now, I don't know the exact 12 cards we're getting to replace cards with. I don't know what that sideboard, we'll call it for now, is going to be for this deck. But we can get some educated hints. We already know a couple cards that are going to be existing in it, and based on what we have here versus what cards we know exist, what might be in those sideboard kind of style things that we're going to get. So let's just jump into what's wrong. Well, let's start. Let's not start with what's wrong. Let's start with what makes this deck good, because I think that's starting with what's wrong make it sound like a bad deck. It's not a bad deck, but it's not great in the current meta with just the 5. But we can make it better with a couple cards. So what's great in this deck? Foamy. Oh my god. This card is so good. Because if you go turn 1 Foamy defense position and your opponent goes, alright, Necruff attack it, you expend some stuff, you get your Foamy back. So on your turn, unless your opponent Earthquakes this or uses some premium removal card on this, which they don't want to do, it's a Foamy, it's a 2-3. Why am I going to Earthquake a 2-3? We're going to start our turn almost guaranteed with something in play to ascend. That's really strong. So having a Foamy out on turn 1, if it gets destroyed, you just pull a new Foamy out. Now, the issue with this deck, which maybe you already know from watching some games, is there's only 2 Foamy. Why are there only 2 Foamy? So we already know, Dan has said, that there's going to be a third Foamy in those extra 12 cards he's sending to everybody with the decks. So thank goodness for that, because that makes this card from almost useless in this deck. I mean, it's not useless, but it's kind of weak in the setup to fantastic. Then we have one Caprigal, that's fine, but it gets Foamies back. So honestly, if you have Foamy in play, you lose a Foamy on turn 1, right? You get the Foamy in play, you can instantly send a Caprigal, destroy something, get another Foamy out. When that Foamy dies, now you have a super resilient board. That's what Water likes. So from what we've seen, Water likes to be super sticky, really rough to deal with. Again, Foamy. The only way to get rid of Foamy completely is to Earthquake it or Laurels it, or Nexus a Leo to it. Like, you really just need to destroy it with an effect. It Otherwise, what you don't want to do, because as an opponent, you don't want to waste 2 runes in your Earthquake to get rid of a 2-3. It feels so bad. So Foamy's great at just keeping a resilient board. You know, you you want to keep your Foamy, and Caprigal gets Foamies back. So ideally, it's like you lose one Foamy, you have Foamy in play, you send that Foamy to Caprigal, you have 2 in your Underworld now. Caprigal gets 1 back into play. When that Foamy dies, you get another Foamy back, super resilient. Now you can just go back into Caprigal or some other 2-drop. Or maybe you jump over to the Majesty. That's really good. So Foamy, really good. Caprigal, pretty strong. I'd probably, I'd 100% run another Foamy. I might run a second Caprigal. I wouldn't do 3, but I definitely would do 2. What else is really good in this deck? Aphros, great Nexus card. Draw 2 for Nexus up to 2. Very good at what it does. It's basically another slightly awkward Nog. Very good at drawing. You have to use your summon or your first enchant to do it, so you're kind of missing out on the enchant, but early on you can use it for an extra draw effect. That's really good. Kraken is solid at slowing your opponent down. Now, we think he's a little bit weak because you can't use the ability from a special enchant only when he's normal enchanted. But if your opponent's running out of gas, he can lock your opponent's board down until you find some answers. So having Kraken's pretty good. I think you might only run one because you can search for it with your Peliquarius. So you might only need one because it's not going to always be worth it in a matchup. So I would take out one Kraken probably. What else is really good? Veritaqua. Great card we found out. If your opponent's playing in a position where they have to go defense mode because you are a little bit ahead and they don't want to expend too much, Veritaqua just says, okay, bye. Knock out something, knock out the Spinosac, knock out, your Spratter in defense mode. Like, Veritaqua, we're finding to be very good in this meta because he's a very good removal card on a stick. So he removes something and he's still a 3-1 body that your opponent has to get rid of. Smoltuga, he's okay. He's nice because he's got the 5 defense, which is where you want to be with 1 enchant defense, and he can get you a fire spirit from your deck. But the only fire spirit you want to get from your deck of this is Wormite, which is a great card. So I think Smoltuga is fine as a 2 of, but I would probably take a Wormite out because you either get Wormite or we'll just use Smoltuga to find Wormite. Actually, you might still want the 2 Wormite. It really depends on what those extra cards are in the deck. 1 Pandora's Box is a good card in this deck. It does great against, the wind deck, and it does good against the water deck itself too because you can negate the foamy activations. So having a 1 of in the main deck is pretty good because there are a lot of decent shut off mechanics you can do with it. Resting Your Laurels, great card. Atlantis, Poseidon, great cards. Poseidon, Globby, sorry if that's bad a little bit, but you know, get extra enchants and draw cards, extra Nexus abilities, like really nice ramp. So if you have, your Foamy in play, gets destroyed, you special summon your Foamy in turn 1. You have Poseidon out, you give that Foamy an extra water and you ascend into Majesty. Like, that's a solid play. That's really good. But if your opponent's ahead and they have 2 creatures in play, well, now they, as with the deck currently, is like, okay, I play Blazarus, kill Foamy. And then you get like a Sluggle out or something, and it doesn't feel that great. And Tsunami's very good, except in the mirror match. Tornado's pretty solid. Nectar of God's great. So what's bad with this deck? The amount of foamies. Cinder is terrible because there is nothing in this deck that mills your opponent except for Cinder. So you're not getting a mill win. He's a 3-2. I'm not going to say Cinder's a bad card, but we don't have enough support in this deck for Cinder. He shouldn't be in this deck. Eruption should not be in this deck. Why are we playing Eruption in a deck that's focused on, being super resilient and getting a big thing out or being defensive? We're not racing our opponent. Eruption's a race card. We're spending 2 to expend 3 of our opponents. And what's worse is the worst matchup for water right now is fire. This it basically does nothing against fire. It's not a good card. So immediately when I'm looking at this deck and I'm looking at my 12 extra cards, I'm dropping Eruption right away. I'm dropping Cinder right away. Oh man, I've hit the hands on whoops. I'm dropping a Kraken. And the rest of the cards are like pretty solid. And I would probably go. I would definitely. Let's see. So this is 4 cards here, right? So let me take those 4 cards out, right? So we need to get 4 more cards with what we got, right? I would definitely run an extra foamy. So there's an extra foamy. Run another Caprigal. I'd run another removal, whether it's Resting on Laurels or maybe we'll get Shield of Achilles is a good one. And what I might run an extra Krakatuga because Krakatuga is a nice defensive option that doesn't need to attack to do damage because you can expend the 2 fire from your deck. Now there's not a ton of fire spirits, so I think the 1 Krakatuga is honestly okay. I think having one option to just be defensive and hit face, in a sense, is solid. But maybe I'd run another Tornado in this deck just to deal with runes. And this already is like a way more consistent deck. Just adding a foamy, adding a little bit more removal, and knocking out some of the cards that we don't need. Like, this would be a much more balanced deck, I think, than what it currently is. Maybe instead of Circle the Sky, you put an extra Nog, or you get rid of Circle the Sky and play Aphros. It's a little bit of a toss up there. But immediately when you get this deck, if you bought this deck, what you're going to do is you're going to take out Cinder, Eruption, and maybe a Crackid, maybe a Peliquarius, and you're going to put anything else that is removal or good, because this deck is also missing a lot of removal. Your removal pack, so the normal deck removal package, Laurels, Vertaqua, and then you have pseudo removal with Tsunami, which you can put something in defense position to hit it, whether it gets weaker or you can hit it with Vertaqua after. And Tornado is a rune removal, and you get one Tornado. And there's some decks where knocking out a rune will do a lot to stop your opponent. So this deck, I think, needs a little bit of removal help. Other than that, you take out the bad cards, and all of a sudden this deck is just goes from, this is like right now from a C tier deck to like a B tier deck, like instantly just by replacing 4 cards. Now the other things you might want to do with this deck, depending on what we get, is maybe add another Poseidon, take out a Trident, because Trident's not really super strong. Now it's nice to have Majesty and Trident, so I'm a little iffy on that. The search with Peliquarius is good, but maybe if you have like a Nectar of the Gods, you could drop Peliquarius for Nectar of the Gods. Because Peliquarius, although the search is nice, is a little slow, but at least it's a toolboxy thing. Or if there's something you can, like if you can drop Smoltuga for some other 5 defense 1 drop for that early just defensive play, I think that's fair too. Maybe you drop like a Smoltuga for a Warmite, because you're really only going to get Warmite with Smoltuga anyway. So I think maybe even knocking out the 2 Smoltugas for a Warmite and maybe a Shield of Achilles, if that's an option, is a good idea. Maybe adding one more Krakatuga is an okay idea. We don't want to go down too many of our 1 drops, because remember, we still need to go from 1 to 2. But maybe dropping Smoltuga for a Krakatuga or dropping Smoltuga for a Warmite is a solid idea. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this deck. I'm going to kind of go into all the other decks as well. So this will be a 5-deck series. If you have any questions about the deck or community ideas about it, just let me know in the comments. I have less people subscribed to my YouTube channel than my Steam page, so hey, subscribe, like, cringe, YouTube ending, do all that for me. I appreciate it a ton. Talk to me in the comments. I do like reading the comments, and I will respond when I'm not busy, aka I've been working all week, so tomorrow's my first day off in a while. I'll be doing a bunch of stuff, and I'll be around to answer questions, or just DM me on Discord. I love talking to you guys. All right, see you in the next video. I think the next one will probably be fire. I think I'm going to go poor to great and see where we go from there. So you guys have a good one until next video.